Hi everyone, this is Marie Blue Angel, and today I am playing Under the Thorns. This is a game that came out of Otome Jam 2024, so this year, and I'm very excited to get to it because I've had this on my computer since August, and if you're keeping track like I am, it is now November. So about 3 months. It's been since I've downloaded this game. But fret not, I am finally getting to it, and the general premise is that our main character here is on the right side. I think her name's Clara, has been hired, but she's like the 13th or 14th maid that has been more recently hired for this manor slash estate for this guy over here on the left. Whatever his name is, I have no idea. And it's a bit of a mystery what's happened to all these previous mates before her, but also what's up with this guy. So we're gonna go into it together and figure it out. I'm very excited because I really like the art style, and I'm intrigued by the premise in general. Um, Also, this might not be that long of a video, rather, because my voice is a little hoarse. With all the cold weather, I need to be on more vocal rest because I think I'm overextending myself. But I'm gonna try my best. So if today's episode requires lots of yelling, I don't think I can do that. Um, Anyways, that's just a fair warning. Let's just get into it so we can see what is going to go on in Under the Thorns. I also like. Is this supposed to be like a pen? Or like a. Oh, it's like. Or no, it's actually like this tea. It looks like a candle, and it's candle holder like over here. I don't even know. I don't know what you call that. Anyways, sorry, I just noticed that. Okay. Chapter 1. Yeah, I think it said that there would be like 5 to 6 hours worth of playtime, so that's a lot. We're gonna definitely break this up. Oh, the loud noise woke me from my sleep, and I reluctantly opened my eyes while still seated in the rattling carriage. Daylight had emerged while I was sleeping, casting a feeble glimmer into the dim and shabby confines of the carriage. How far are we now? With a smooth move, I pulled myself up from where I was sitting, trying to fix my messy hair. As the world off outside buzzed with noise, the coachman spoke to me through a small opening. You've woken up right on time. We're close now. Steady yourself and get ready to jump off. Jump off? Are you certain we are in proximity? You've not got much faith in folks, have you? Reasonably, my reservations were justified. He had been repeating, like a wearied mantra, that our arrival was imminent, yet with no success. Perhaps stung by my inquisitive stare, the coachman gestured toward the crest of the hill. You see that, lass? I followed the line of his finger, and a stately manor loomed atop the elevation. Though it was too far away to discern its precise features, its sheer grandeur was unmistakable. I leaned closer to the window, striving to absorb the view, and then turned my gaze back to the coachman. What can you share about the manor? I'm just passing through, lass. I ain't got much to offer in the way of knowing stuff. Perplexed by his lack of certainty for someone of his occupation, I nodded in response. The carriage in which I'd been dispatched was hardly in impeccable condition. Whether it was the pall of tobacco smoke or the jolts from the uneven terrain, my stomach had churned during the journey, and my posterior ached. In all candor, the remuneration they had offered was alluring, albeit with doubt about its authenticity. However, given the prestige of the family name, I steeled myself and persevered. I'm not entirely sure if this is a wise course of action. I watched with trepidation as the manor drew nearer. I mean, we're here, aren't we? Also, I gathered that. Wasn't the writing seems very British English like, and as much as I would love to do my RP accent or my approximation of it. Again, my voice is a bit too weak. Though maybe for the main guy, if we see the guy, and I think it's partially voice acted, if not fully, I'm not sure. But I can fill those in. Since the main character is the character I will be narrating slash being for most of the time, I'm just keeping my natural accent slash my American accent here. But anyways, isn't this very interesting? I like this background here that we have. It's very pretty. Okay, so we gather that she's been hired. What drew her to the job was the financial compensation that came with the job. But at what cost? We will see. My countenance bore a trace of consternation as the formerly imperceptible features of this state slowly coalesced into view. A fleeting moment of regret brushed against my consciousness as I pondered whether I should have remained in the townhouse, notwithstanding the diminished pay. Irrespective of the manor's facade, the main entrance was the epitome of pristine maintenance. It stood as a constant symbol of the family's ostensible reverence for it, regardless of the anticipation of guests. In stark contrast, this manor appeared indifferent to such niceties. The towering fence, shrouded in unsightly ivy, and the corroded, peeling iron gates bespoke a manor unconcerned with aesthetics. I mean, it looks pretty aesthetic to me from here, though the roof is the roof right here seems like the most telling of the state of the estate of the manor that I can see very clearly right now. The sky, its countenance morphing in response, exuded not merely an eerie ambiance, but an unmistakable uncanniness. An involuntary gasp escaped me. Could there be a more perfect setting for a mystery novel? The coachman, who had been monitoring me for any signs of amusement, erupted in laughter. "Fret not, young lass. This is the poshest place I've ever stepped foot in." I had my doubts, considering the ups and downs I'd already faced. But what choice did I have? I straightened my shoulders and prepared for the unsettling creak of the iron gates swinging open. Ooh, but the sun's coming up. It looks nice and warm. I like these flowers here also. Very pretty. The carriage moved through the open gates, passing through the gardens, and eventually stopping in front of the main entrance. As I got off, carrying my belongings, the sheer size of the garden momentarily captivated me. The coachman's assurance proved correct. The garden was indeed well kept, though it seemed strangely out of context. While I looked around, a voice called out to me. "Miss Clara Hart." A footman. He approached with a friendly smile on his face as he extended his hand. I was ready to reciprocate with a handshake when I noticed his gaze shifting towards my luggage. I quickly shook my head. "No need for you to carry the burden. Please, do not trouble yourself. It is my duty. I assure you, it's just one bag." After witnessing my hesitation, he initiated polite conversation, attempting to break the ice. "Is this your first foray into serving a manor, Miss Hart?" "Indeed. Only last week I was in service as Lady Jane's maid in her townhouse, rather." Fortuitously, I had been a lady's maid for some time, and he astutely broached the topic with tact. "I've heard she's quite exacting. Is that so?" "Well, she maintains her own standards, but she is a fair employer. She did establish a multitude of rules, and I often found myself inadvertently breaking them, earning her displeasure. Nevertheless, recognizing my departure was tinged with concern, she kindly provided me with a letter of introduction to the manor, which was a consolation. The footman responded with a reassuring smile to my answer. "Our manor shares certain similarities. I trust you will find yourself acclimated, Miss Hart." "I certainly hope so." The conversation infused my voice with a natural cheerfulness as the tension from our earlier discussion faded. Life within the manor appeared less formidable with a colleague of his caliber. Okay, good. We have a decent footing so far with our coworker. That's good. Ooh, this is pretty. Look at those grand staircase. Case. Those. Those grand stairs I meant. And the chandelier too. Quite nice. After guiding me to the central hall of the manor, he assumed responsibility for my luggage and departed with brisk, confident strides. I shall attend to your luggage. I felt a sudden pang of deception. Just as the words began to form in my mind, an individual approached, striding purposefully towards me. Hello. Dressed in a dignified black coat, she exuded an air of authority, her impeccable posture and immaculately coiffed hair leaving not a single strand astray. Wow, that's cool. So, this is the person I am to meet. I cast an appraising glance her way. Though I speculated she might be the mistress of the manor, her attire indicated otherwise. When our eyes met, she graced me with a composed smile and an extended a greeting. I have eagerly waited your arrival. Have you found the journey to be taxing, miss? Oh, not at all, thanks to your prearranged carriage. I am delighted to hear that. I am Olivia Quiller, the housekeeper. I would be most appreciative if you addressed me as Mrs. Quiller. Certainly, Mrs. Quiller. And so our greeting came to a close. Mrs. Quiller promptly retrieved a pocket watch, checked the time, and proceeded to explain the schedule in a methodical, clerical fashion. As a rule, I would introduce you to Lord Robert, but, given his recent disposition, it's evident you won't be graced with his presence. In lieu of that, I'm determined that I shall promptly accompany you on the tour of this manor. Is that agreeable to you? The implication leaned more towards an announcement than a question. Yet, it was information I should have been privy to in advance, so I had no objections. Given the circumstances, I think it's the lone alternative. In response, Mrs. Quiller graced me with a sort of smile, a smile of a different sort, a rather enigmatic one. Perfect. Okay, so Mrs. Quiller is very interesting so far, and we have information that something's going on with Lord Robert, and he can't grace us with his presence, so we'll keep that in mind and see when we run into him later, if there's anything that jumps out at us. Incomprehensible words slipped from my lips. Mrs. Quiller took no notice of my attempt to inquire as she began leading the way. I followed her, feeling as if I were being abruptly steered. My eyes retraced the entrance I had entered only to see the door slowly closing behind us. Ooh. In the corridor to the right of the manor house, we strolled through an area that evoked a cloister. I don't know what a cloister is. Portraits of ancestors adorned one wall, bearing witness to their illustrious days. However, the manor's prevalent eerie atmosphere made it challenging to fully appreciate these depictions. It's somewhat disquieting to think that they appear so lifelike and might be observing me. I mulled over this while stealing a glance at Mrs. Quiller, who forged ahead. I guess that is an insight thought, when they're in the single quotes. Her back was turned to me, and she continued to provide explanations whether I followed or not. While she delved into the history of the manor and the biographies of its ancestors, my understanding was limited to a general grasp of the layout. She refrained from inquiring where I had absorbed the information, as if she had little expectation. Nonetheless, I paid close attention. She elucidated the tasks I would undertake within the manor. One might assume cleaning is simple, but Mrs. Quiller regarded it with great significance. In particular, she emphasized the importance of monitoring the entry to private rooms and whether the doors were left open or closed. In this manor house, we leave the door to an unoccupied room open. If closed, it implies the presence of guests or occupants of the house. Should you need to enter a closed room, knock and wait a response before entering. What if there's no response? Do not enter. Request your supervisor to handle it. I shall remember that. I find myself slightly confounded, though I grasp the protocols of the manor. Mrs. Quiller, content with my composed demeanor, ascended the staircase without uttering another word, her gaze fixed upon the corridor's expanse. The next noteworthy point leads us to the bedchambers. She halted abruptly. Okay, what's happening? She looks kind of shocked. I'm gonna take a sip of my water. Is Lord Robert here? I recoiled a few steps, narrowly avoiding a collision with Mrs. Quiller's back. Mrs. Quiller, typically serene, now appeared shaken. Mrs. Quiller? I turned my gaze toward her, pondering the nature of the disturbance. At the corridor's terminus, devoid of life amid encroaching darkness, an enigmatic figure cast a long, human-like shadow. A mysterious presence meandered, swaying as if in a spectral dance. It seemed oblivious to our existence. I felt a quiver of fear at the sight of this unfathomable phenomenon. Mrs. Quiller! I cried out, sensing the imperative need to retreat. Simultaneously, Mrs. Quiller seized my wrists, guiding us swiftly downstairs. Could that have been Lord Robert? Like, does she know? Like, I don't know, maybe he's prone to certain behaviors. I'm not sure. The evasion led us to the courtyard. I curled up, shivering from the biting chill of the wind, whereas Mrs. Quiller stood rigid, seemingly unaffected by the cold. Her eyes remained fixed on me in silence. A wordless pressure lingered, making my mouth go dry. Okay, silence from us both. After a while, Mrs. Quiller broke the silence. Lady Jane's reference letter attests to your meticulous nature and taciturn disposition. To be candid, in my previous employment, I was somewhat of a troublemaker. Not precisely a gossip, but curiosity often got the better of me. I caused Lady Jane's headaches with various incidents, but never by divulging secrets. I nodded awkwardly, and Mrs. Quiller's mouth corners twitched. She draped a gentle arm around my shoulders, holding my gaze. Miss Hart, if you encounter such a sight, flee. Okay, no. Well, it could still be Lord Robert, but maybe ghost? Question mark? Or what's it called? The Shades of Pemberley. So shades. I mean, the word I was looking for was shadows or shades. So ghostly figures, maybe. We will see. It's an imperative rule you must adhere to. You mean you must? Without exception. She whispered impatiently, redirecting her focus to the manor house. Believe it or not, the manor is besieged by the same peculiar phenomena as before. I rolled my eyes, struggling for words. What was the appropriate response in this perplexing situation? Luck was on my side if I refrained from saying, well, it's possible, considering one of the shadows is at my feet. Regardless, Mrs. Quiller seemed equally perplexed, convinced to call it a bringer of misfortune. I pondered, attempting to formulate a response. I inquire because you mentioned it's a rule. Is it akin to the guidance against closing doors? It bears similarity. Mrs. Quiller mentioned that she would deliver an employee handbook to my room. In the soothing tone, she reassured me of her understanding of my confusion. You needn't worry. It's a collection of rules that shall resolve themselves. Rules. If it proves challenging, inform me. I tend to maintain a well-staffed house, allowing for your return home. No, entrust me with the responsibility. I shall endeavor. Now burdened with the responsibility of providing sustenance for my family, I had no intention of retreating to my former employment. Appeased by my response, Mrs. Quiller bestowed upon me another satisfied smile. Surprisingly, the mausoleum was quite close to the manor house. By turning your head, it offered a view of the manor's right wall. A bold decision for a residence steeped in history and grandeur. The ancestor of the lord of this manor, devoted to his departed wife, orchestrated the change to gaze upon her grave at will. In a society where arranged marriages prevailed, the fervent love struck me as eccentric. Although I was assigned to tend to the mausoleum, I wasn't given any explicit instructions. Alice was made responsible to oversee my training and teach me the details of the daily tasks. Whatever Mrs. Quiller chanted to me about the owner of the mausoleums seemed to go in one ear and about the other. Okay, so it's dark now. Just as I was growing accustomed to the surroundings, I sensed an unforeseen wave of attention fixing upon me. Puzzled, I raised my head to witness a colossal figure materializing beyond the glass. The recollection of dancing shadows tensed my shoulders. Oh, Mrs. Quiller. Over there. Mrs. Quiller fell silent and followed my gaze. Also, so was Alice just another maid? Another person? She then tried to assuage my fear with a smirk. Fear not. Fear not. He is not one of them. Sorry? Him? He is Lord Edward, the heir to this prestigious manor. Okay, so there's a Lord Robert and a Lord Edward, so I'm assuming Lord Robert is his father. With precision, she outlined the figure against the cloudy sky. His hair, a shade of golden ash blonde, matched the clear blue sky of his eyes, and the static and calm demeanor defined him. Our gazes met, his fingers fiddling with the delicate chain of his necklace as he observed our surroundings. A look of surprise crossed his face. He attempted to communicate something to me through subtle mouth movements. I found myself captivated, studying his lips with genuine intrigue. Focus. My gaze might have lingered had not another voice snapped back at me. Pardon me. I hastily clasped my hands, assuming a polite gesture, feeling my face uncontrollably warm. Absorbed in observing the Lord, I momentarily overlooked Mrs. Quiller's presence. Her eyes narrowed for that very reason. Could you tell me more about Lord Edward? The question, intended as an invitation, earned only a raised eyebrow from her. A momentary gaze at the window preceded a dismissive response. He is an unruly man, a difficult one to deal with. I recommend you avoid talking to him as much as possible. Oh, understood. Stiff responses left me feeling out of place, a contrast to her earlier praise of the manor. Even if he was indeed unruly, it wasn't a particularly kind characterization of him. Mrs. Quiller added a cautionary note, apparently unsatisfied with my response. Should he visit the mausoleum, give him space. He's very sensitive. Our conversation ended there. Mrs. Quiller spoke only when explanations were necessary, and I, stunned by her continuous deflections, remained silent. Hence the sloppy induction to the manor reached its end. Okay, first day, Denzi. Oh, chapter 2 already. Attending to a lady's every need and overseeing a manor house was indeed disparate tasks. Alice, okay, so this is Alice, aiding my transition, bore a stern demeanor, leading us up and down the stairs innumerable times. By its conclusion, my limbs trembled like a fledgling foal. I'm utterly cream-crackered. What an interesting phrase. I mean, I get it. I like these curtains here. Waringly propelling myself, nearly at the brink of collapse, I entered the servants' hall. As the sun set, a bustling crowd had gathered. I sank in the nearest chair, exhaling a heavy sigh. My limbs are aching. I hope I can rise again tomorrow. While I was massaging my weary legs and pondering, a man quietly occupied the seat across from me. He scrutinized me with a pensive stare, deeming me a stranger. I'm not sure if I recognize you. I'm new to this place, as you can see. No wonder you don't seem to know me. I'm Thomas. Clara. I've been saying Clara this entire time. Clara. It's fine. When I ignored his hand, he discreetly wiped his damp palms on his apron, a smirk settling upon his features. He then continued speaking, adopting an air of sagacity. Right you are. You've clearly had a day of it. All tuckered out, are you? Absolutely. I could barely lift a finger. Okay, so it's still the same day, but it is the end of the day. Or is it the next day? Question mark. Has to at least be another day, for sure. Okay. But it's the end of another day. That explains the lack of handshake. Well, fret not, my dear, for this culinary wizard is about to whip up something scrumptious to revive you. A short while later, Thomas reappeared, a plate in his hands. His face, softened by the desire to comfort, held a warmth that contrasted with the coldness in my stomach. The aroma of the food that Thomas had painstakingly prepared filled the air, but it failed to entice my senses. I took a small taste, more out of obligation than desire, and Thomas's face instantly became a mask of worry. Is it really that dreadful? Well, you do seem a bit unsure of yourself for a chef, wouldn't you say? Perhaps it's because I find myself playing the cook for the day. Oh. He let out a big sigh, as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Right. Well, the thing is, Mary up and left suddenly, which threw us into a bit of a tizzy, you see. I've been doing my best to pick up the slack, so to speak. Who's Mary? Well, she was the one who looked after the mausoleum before you, as it were. Utterly surprised by Thomas's knowledge of things I had not shared, I asked, And how exactly did you deduce that I'd be the new mausoleum keeper? Well, whispers about you have been swirling around the manor for days like leaves in a storm. It'd be quite the feat to remain completely oblivious, you see. Whispers about what? Oh, mostly about your tenor, of course. We even placed a friendly wager amongst ourselves on just how long you'll last before throwing in the towel. My eyebrows shot up in astonishment at his audacity. How could he possibly make a bet without even knowing who the person was? Catching my disbelieving stare, he let out a disgruntled sigh. Hey, don't give me that look. I was on your side. I bet that you would persist for a week. Only a week? The mask of pleasantness on his face finally cracked, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath. As my disapproval became apparent, Thomas stammered out some excuse about needing to urgently attend to his duties and scurried away, seeking refuge in the kitchen. With a heavy sigh that echoed through the room, I laid down my fork and knife. The meal, unfortunately, had been a disappointing affair. I suppose I should return to my chamber now. Upon entering my assigned room, I was greeted by an unexpected spectacle. To my astonishment, it was an entirely private chamber. In abodes with limited space, shared lodgings were the norm, so I expected something similar here. Am I their lost daughter or something? I hastily dismissed my unwarranted captivation, delivering a stinging slap to my own cheeks as a reprimand. This was not the time for frivolity, especially with the bet riding on my resilience. I need to prioritize the organization of my attire and possessions, followed by a thorough examination of the established guidelines. Okay, so this is only day one, because otherwise she wouldn't be shocked about her bed and slash her room. Okay, so she's settling in now. It's interesting to meet this Thomas character. What does he usually do then? Like, is he also a footman, or is he like a? I don't know. He helps the cook? ? But then who is normally the cook? Was Mary also the cook before? Because I don't know if that makes sense in my brain, but I guess we'll learn more details later. It should be on the drawer. My gaze swept across the room, landing upon a delicate stack of papers precariously perched atop the dresser. I snatched it up and delved into the instructions. Let me see. Employee Handbook. 0. Manor Layout. The estate consists of 3 distinct areas. The main manor house, a separate annex building, and a garden. The manor house spans 3 floors above ground and 1 basement level. The left wing is dedicated to employee quarters, while the right wing houses the private residential areas. The basement serves as a storage and culinary space, while certain areas accessible only to authorized servants. The annex building comprises 2 above-ground stories and a basement level. This building is solely intended for guest accommodation. The garden is divided into 3 sections: a carriageway, an outer yard, and a backyard/courtyard. 4. Unbreakable policy, a code to abide by. 0. Manor manifestations. Strange and unexplained events can occur within the manor. A. Failure to comply with the following policy will absolve us of responsibility for any resulting incidents. 1. Confidentiality mandate. All occurrences within the manor must be kept secret from the outside world. A. This is a contractual obligation, and any breach will result in disciplinary action in accordance with the policy. 2. Restricted passageways. Do not enter corridors where shadowy figures are known to manifest. During daylight hours, these corridors often become inhabited by humanoid shadows. While no physical contact has been reported, we suspect potential danger, and entry is strictly prohibited. If your duties require you to be in these areas, inform your supervisor and seek alternative assignments. 3. Vacant chamber protocol. Leave vacant chambers ajar, not sealed. Out of respect for our guests, entry shall only occur after a polite knock and audible confirmation. If an unanswered knock is received, seek a supervisor to address the issue. Sunset prescription. No movement allowed after sunset. For safety reasons, the manor operates during daylight hours only, prohibiting authorized personnel from moving after sunset. Occasional noises may occur after hours. We advise ignoring them, as they typically subside on their own. Sounds near your door often originate from night watchmen. Please do not be alarmed. Mealtime protocol. 5. The Lord's family's meals follow a predetermined schedule. Setting the table and presenting food will always increase the number of occupants by 1. Serving guests will also increase the head count by 1 person. If someone joins mid-meal, non-compliance is permitted. 6. Discourse directive. Avoid lengthy conversations with Lord Edward. Interaction is permitted when necessary, but refrain from initiating conversations unless invited. If someone brings business to Lord Edward, promptly direct them to Olivia Quiller. 7. Outbuilding ordinance. Unauthorized access to outbuildings is strictly prohibited, except for the stables and mausoleum. Currently, outbuildings are restricted to designated personnel and the family of the manor's proprietor. If accompaniment to an outbuilding is required, obtain permission from your supervisors or superiors beforehand. Ooh, those were a lot of rules. My mind reeled from the intricate details of the instructions, causing a dizzying sensation. With a defeated sigh, I reluctantly set the document aside. The complexity of the instructions left me staggered, with a barrage of unanswered questions lingering in my thoughts. This is hard to believe. Yet duty beckoned, and the handbook remained a necessity for the present. I swiftly stored it away and set about organizing my garments and provisions. My modest belongings found their proper place with ease. Disposing of my day's attire, I hung them neatly and settled onto the bed, closing my eyes. I surrendered to a surge of thoughts. The imposing exterior of the manor might suggest otherwise, but the inhabitants did not seem inherently wicked. As the day's events began to fade into the background, I found myself replaying the faces and voices of those I had met. The garrulous coachman, the perceptive footman, Mrs. Quiller, a rather enigmatic person, and the meticulous supervisor, Alice. And then there was Thomas, the one whose condescending manner left an unpleasant aftertaste. But it was Lord Edward, the heir to the manor, who held my attention. His gaze, faintly tinged with concern, lingered in my mind, a stark contrast to the resentment he seemed to evoke in others. He didn't seem that bad. My mind, teeming with thoughts, sought solace in slumber. A yawn involuntarily escaped my lips as I rubbed the corners of my eyes, succumbing to the overwhelming fatigue that enveloped me. In the blink of an eye, I drifted in the realm of dreams, leaving behind the day's events. The jarring resonance of a knock tore me from the brink of sleep. With a groggy mind, I surveyed my surroundings, only to discover the room shrouded in impenetrable darkness. Struggling to regain my bearings, I hastily assessed my attire, then cautiously approached the door, my thoughts racing with impending disruption. Oh! A sudden realization struck me, and I instinctively held back my words. The established guidelines clearly stated that any visit extending beyond the designated work hours was to be dismissed. This was a policy adhered to by all, and I had no doubt that my fellow servants would uphold it as well. Yet, if this was the case, then why did the insistent knocking persist? Is this my mind? Are they not informed that this room is occupied? The handbooks mentioned of night watchmen suggested that the knocking could be from one of them, operating within the confines of the policy. It raised the question of whether it would be wise to open the door and inform the night watchman of my presence. As the knocking continued, I engaged in a lengthy deliberation. Don't open the door. With a resolute shake of my head, I retreated to my bed, determined to adhere to the rules. Infringing upon the guidelines was the last thing I desired on this night. The relentless knocking, with its unclear purpose, was ghastly. It seemed more like an act of intimidation rather than an attempt to adhere to the policy. No one was here tonight, Clara. Okay? No one. I mean, I feel like they would at least call out if it was an actual emergency, you know? But it feels like we should be following the rules, but also maybe I should be looking for clues. But also I'm scared, so I'm not opening that door. I buried my head beneath my pillow, my ears muffled against the insistent thudding. With eyes squeezed shut, I recited a silent countdown, hoping to find solace in the rhythm of numbers. Slowly, the pounding subsided, replaced by the faint echoes of footsteps retreating into the depths of the manor. A sigh of relief escaped my lips, yet sleep remained elusive, my eyes stubbornly refusing to succumb. With bleary eyes, I uttered a despondent reflection, my mind replaying the unsettling events that had transpired. I have to rise early for work tomorrow. What should I do? Okay, here's the mausoleum. Oh. Okay, I'm back. As dawn broke, sleep continued to elude me, leaving fatigue as my unwelcome companion. I persevered through the morning, but the solitude of the mausoleum proved too much for my weary body. With each methodical sweep of the floor, my eyelids succumbed to the allure of sleep. My head sank lower under the warm sun's embrace. Let me just...
とても疲れているようですね。
Hello? I jolted awake. Oh, I should read it because that was in Japanese question mark.
とても疲れているようですね。
You seem to be exceptionally fatigued. I jolted awake. A figure emerged from the shadows, its presence casting a chill over me. It was the Lord, the imposing figure I had been warned against. We are in English, but I'm assuming that it's just all in Japanese, which is fine. Okay. His hands gently cradled the floral arrangement, presumably a tribute to the departed. My lips quivered, torn between embarrassment and awkwardness. Hello. It's quite a splendid afternoon, isn't it? Lord, taken aback for a transient moment, revealed a tranquil smile.
はい、いい天気です。あなたには違うみたいだけど。
Indeed, it's a delightful afternoon. Though, not for you, I presume. I'm making him sound kind of British, whatever. I like your little outfit. Do you visit all the time to the mausoleum? I'm curious. Well, I couldn't get much sleep last night.
おや、どうして？
Oh dear. What happened? What happened? It's just, something unsettling occurred during the night.
ああ。
Lord Edward nodded sagely, his expression indicating that he had grasped the nature of the unsettling event.
私はもう慣れていますが、初めての方にとっては恐ろしいことかもしれませんね。
I've grown accustomed to it, but it might seem daunting to those unfamiliar with this manor. Has this occurred frequently for you?
お母さんが亡くなってからずっとですね。だからずいぶん前からですね。
Since my mother's passing, yes. It's been happening for a while. Okay, so this is interesting. So everyone in this manor knows that there's ghostly figures going around and interesting things that happen at night, which makes sense why the rules are the rules. But I wonder if anyone's ever tried to investigate. Maybe Edward has. Who knows? With an air of poise and reverence, Lord Edward swept past me, his movements exuding an effortless grace. He gently lowered himself to the ground, his fingers, or hands rather, carefully placing the bouquet of flowers upon the tombstone. As the sunlight brushed against his closed eyelids, an ethereal glow emanated from the corners of his eyes, casting a mesmerizing aura around him. It was a sight of such captivating beauty, almost surreal, that I found myself questioning the reality of the scene unfolding before me. With a final murmur of prayer, Lord Edward gently opened his eyes, his expression serene and composed.
ともあれ、この邸宅に来たことを歓迎します。
Well, thank you. In any case, I extend a heartfelt welcome to you.
もし何かあったら気軽に話してください。
And I encourage you to reach out whenever you feel the need for conversation or simply someone to listen. That's nice. But we had to remember our rules, but also I want to talk to him. His considerate attitude started to thaw my suspicions. Please, call me Clara. Clara. A sudden chill crept down my spine, wrenching my attention away from my task. Ooh. As I turned, I found myself locked in Alice's gaze, her expression as unreadable as ever, a broom held firmly in her grasp. Her unexpected presence disoriented me, as I had been under the impression that I would be working alone today. Sweeping. Not done yet? Anticipating the scolding that seemed to loom, I shot Lord Edward a momentary apprehensive look. His composure suggested that he had anticipated Alice's actions, and he discreetly turned away.
仕事中でしたね。続けてください。
I must have arrived at an inopportune moment. Please continue with your task. Alice's stern countenance eased as the man entered the house. She looked at me nervously. Oh, I'm sorry. I was rigid. It's nothing. It's all right. Nothing untoward happened. In fact, he seemed pretty kind. Kind? You haven't even witnessed the low-life nature of his. Alice's head swayed in disapproval as she whispered her disgust at the idea, but her reaction barely made a dent in my thoughts. Our interaction was brief and unremarkable. He simply expressed his concern for my well-being. However, I knew Alice would dismiss my account with disbelief, prompting me to release a heavy sigh. Who am I to trouble myself over such matters? He's the heir to this grand estate, and I am but a humble servant. I had my hands full with my duties, that's for certain. With a resolute shake of my head, I pushed my thoughts aside and stepped into the manor. The distraction may be swift, but the work is eternal. Good morning, everyone. Clara, how come you're up this early? I happened to get up early today. Plus, we have deep cleaning coming up, don't we? Oh my God, Bruce. Our little Clara has grown up to be the big maid. I've always been a maid. Their playful snorts hung in the air, hinting at their enduring perception of me as a familiar face. I quelled a sigh and gathered my equipment, knowing I'd have to navigate the manor yet again as the new kid. 2 months have passed since I arrived at this manor, which meant that Thomas should be drowning in regret by now over his empty wallet. But in their eyes, I remain a mere newcomer. Well, that's a shame for you, but I'm already feeling confident. With a murmured sigh, I embarked on my ascent, my gaze drawn to the ethereal sunlight streaming through the windows. The corridors, once steeped in an enigmatic aura of mystery interpretation, now seemed less ominous, their gloom dispelled by the gentle embrace of the morning sun. There's that shadow again. Despite my growing familiarity with the manor's layout, I still couldn't shake off the lingering sense of disquiet that clung to its walls. With a furrow creasing my brow, I swiftly pivoted and descended the staircase, my eyes darting nervously away from the lurking shadow. Opting for a longer route, I decided to circumvent the left corner, my heart pounding with a mix of apprehension and determination. The shadow's ominous presence loomed large, casting a pall over my otherwise resolute steps. Oh, man, I'm running late. Anticipation quickened my steps as I rounded the bend, for I sensed the presence of one waiting for me. Good morning. Have you come to make another visit to the mausoleum today? True to my expectations, Edward sat poised before the tombstone, our invisible connection drawing him to this familiar spot. Okay, so you guys have been seeing each other very often. As I approached, his face lit up with a smile as radiant as a flower in bloom, a silent welcome that transcended words.
今日に限って日差しがよく当たるね。いい天気だよ。
Indeed, I have. The sun is bright today. Lovely weather. I agree. It's almost spring. Upon closer acquaintance with Lord Edward, I discovered a stark contrast between the perception others had instilled in me and the reality of the man himself. He possessed a depth of compassion that defied the callous reputation he bore, a trait that slowly chipped away at the preconceived notions I had harbored. My instincts, though often dismissed as unreliable by those who deemed me insensitive, seemed to be offering a more nuanced understanding of Lord Edward. Through repeated interactions, I began to discern qualities that had eluded me before, a tapestry of kindness and empathy woven into the core of his being. Even now, he was a silent oasis of support amidst a flurry of fallen leaves while I raked the grass. Like a gardener tending to his plants, he listened attentively as I shared my thoughts, nurturing them with his presence. Could the frequent turnover of the mausoleum attendants be the reason? But it's been 2 months already.
時間が経てばきっと良くなるだろう。トーマスはもう何も言ってないよ。
Things will likely settle down with time. Thomas, like you mentioned, doesn't seem to bother you anymore. Only because he lost that bet. My lord, I don't come across as childish, do I?
クララは大人のように見えるよ。
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. T's are hard for me in this accent. My American ways just want to not really articulate my T's. You seem quite mature, Clara. You're not being sarcastic, are you?
褒め言葉だよ。
Why would I be? Uncertain of the propriety of a servant forming such a close bond with their employer, I nonetheless found solace in the quiet moments shared with Lord Edward. As our conversation flowed, I was struck by the unexpected parallels between us, a realization that sparked both wonder and curiosity. It was a curious phenomenon, the way a lord and a servant, despite their vastly different stations, could discover a common ground that bound them together.
そういえば、おじがハガキを送ってきたよ。
Right. I received a postcard from my uncle. Lord Brandon.
今回は海を渡るそうだ。到着したら写真を送ってくれると言っていたんだ。
Okay, Uncle Brandon wants to go abroad. Yes, he spoke of his desire to cross the vast oceans this time, and pledged to send me pictures once he reaches his destination. That sounds quite exciting. I'd love to travel like that someday.
そうだね。なんて美しいんだろう。
I share your sentiment. That would be a dream come true. Edward's expression softened into a wistful reverie, as if he were already aboard a ship, slicing through the waves on his own grand adventure. A youthful vibrancy, previously concealed by his usual stoicism, now radiated from his features. For the first time, he looked his actual age, which is 20-something? Early 30s? I don't know. Maybe like mid to late 20s. I don't know. I placed my rake aside and settled myself down a comfortable distance away. Why not travel when you have the opportunity?
そうできたらいいのだが。
Okay, different expression we're seeing. It would be wonderful, but... An awkward smile smeared across Edward's face, his voice trailing off as he hesitated to continue. It was clear he was dodging a particular subject, most likely the illness of Robert, the manor's ruler. Okay, I see. That's what's going on with Lord Robert. I completely understand your hesitation. It's a sensitive topic. Edward's lips moved silently, forming and discarding words, until finally he tried to mask his disconcert with a smile over his face.
ありがとう、クララ。
Thank you, Clara. The morning slipped away quickly, filled with lively conversation and laughter. The lunch hour had flown by, and now Edward, filled with regret, actively sought to help with the remaining cleanup. Unfortunately, his efforts at cleaning proved less than fruitful, creating more work than he intended. As I organized the cleaning supplies, I saw a sudden sound pierce the silence, drawing my attention. Bruce stood there, his arms folded across his chest, a playful smile dancing on his lips. Here we go again. Blimey, Clara. Where have you been hiding all morning? And now, Bruce, if I may remind you, my duties lie with the upkeep of the mausoleum. You've been with Lord Edward again. What's the meaning of again? It's not like we're glued at the hip or anything. Oh, really? Don't think I haven't noticed what's brewing. This is awful. My accent, sorry. Honestly, Bruce, give it a rest. It's not what you think. I cut off Bruce's interference with a firm voice, needing to focus on the precise task at hand. Bruce gave a nonchalant shrug, his unconcern evident in his casual posture. Come on, spill the beans. Everyone's nosy about where you've been all morning. Oh, please, drop it, Bruce. I'm already on edge after bumping into that thing again today. That's it? Just 'cause of one of those little beasties? Doesn't make much sense, does it? What if I told you I was struggling to rake leaves? Well, that can be tiring work, I suppose. Bruce, I know this might sound silly, but you know how long it can take to learn something new. Don't make me feel bad about it. Bruce grinned broadly, showing off his crooked teeth that made him look a bit intimidating. I kept my face blank, refusing to let it get to me. All right, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt this time. Well, thanks for nothing. But better watch your step with Lord Edward. No nattering, that's the rule. I turned and walked away, feeling a slight chill despite the warm day. It was difficult to tell a lie, especially one so out of character. But no one is interested in befriending Lord Edward other than me. Olivia's words about Lord Edward's rebellious and unpredictable nature echoed in my mind. Despite Lord Robert and Lord Edward being the masters of the manor, everyone seemed to unquestioningly accept Olivia's portrayal of him. They don't believe me, but he's such a nice person. Why can't they see it? Despite Edward's insistence on leaving them alone if they weren't open to conversation, I dissented. His lack of assertiveness bothered me, especially since respect was rightfully his due as a family member and an employer. I won't let him continue withdrawing from those around him. Drawing strength in Lady Jane's wisdom about relationships, I pushed open the door. Once inside, I was informed that Olivia had summoned me. Come in. I closed the door softly and approached her. The room was overflowing with papers and envelopes, clearly neglected due to the Lord's absence. Clara, at your service, ma'am. Taking a deep breath to steady my nerves, I offered a greeting. Olivia, her eyes momentarily glued to the documents before her, eventually looked up and removed her glasses. With a gentle press of a finger to her forehead, she acknowledged my presence. Oh, it's you. Have a seat. I took a seat in front of her, perfect for a long, relaxing conversation. My desire to depart grew stronger with each passing moment. How may I help you? Alice happened to mention that you've been working through your lunch break, Clara. Is that so? Well, I was told that Mr. Robert cares for the mausoleum, so... I haven't summoned you to reprimand you. I don't disapprove of hard work in the slightest. I appreciate your understanding. However, I must insist that you don't skip meals. Steeling myself for Olivia's potential dismissal, I was met instead with unexpected praise for my meticulous work. The surprise was compounded by my previous anticipation of accusations of napping from either Alice or Bruce. As I contemplated whether to rise, Olivia abruptly began divulging details of her personal situation. Clara, to be honest, the Lord hasn't been feeling quite himself lately. Oh no. Is that so? Edward's downcast expressions made sense now. This is what weighed heavily on his mind. Olivia's gentle smile and nod suggested a misunderstanding of my words. Yes, thanks to that, I'm in charge of his care. Thanks to that? I blinked, momentarily confused by Olivia's cryptic comment. Since I'm unable to leave the manor, I would like you to pick up the medical supplies in my stead. My jaw dropped at the enticing offer. Pardon. If it poses too much inconvenience for you, there's no obligation. Not at all. It's not difficult. At all. Olivia's unexpected compliments were understandable now. Given the circumstances, I had little choice but to accept her offer. Recognizing the implication of Olivia's words and my own lack of options, I simply offered a smile. That settles it, then. I'll notify you when we're scheduled. But now, concentrate on your primary tasks. I've now changed her to be somewhat British. I'm so sorry. So sorry. As you wish. Okay, so is Olivia, like, trying to gain for power? Because, like, maybe she's trying to keep everyone in the dark because, like, she wants to run this place by herself. effectively the rulers being puppets. And if the old guy dies, then like if Lord Edward, everyone thinks he's like not it, you know? So what is happening? I'm counting on you, Clara. A grateful nod escaped my lips, masking the bewilderment that churned within me. Was entrusting such a task to a new maid truly wise? Perhaps Lady Jane's recommendation spoke volumes of my capabilities. Surely Libby wouldn't sign this responsibility without unwavering assurance of my reliability. Wouldn't you agree, my lord?
まあ、オリビアはそんな紹介状一つで心を変える人ではないから。
Okay,
ただ君のことが気に入ったんじゃないか?
Okay, so maybe Olivia likes Clara for some reason. What aspect of my character?
オリビアだけが知っているだろう。
That is truly a question only Olivia can answer herself. Edward lowered himself on the grassy ground, and I took a seat beside him. Though I harbored some discontent, I nodded. I trust the journey will not be overly strenuous.
御者がちゃんと連れて行ってくれるだろう。心配いらないよ。
Okay, no need to worry because our coachman's ability to deliver you safely is fully vouched for. Still, I have some butterflies in my stomach. Have you ever been there by any chance? Edward's head denied the question with a subtle shake. These trips were usually left to the servants, but his expression hinted at something unspoken. As I released a heavy sigh, a fugacious concept blossomed in my mind, leading me to redirect my focus. The sea! Huh? Alice mentioned a harbor near our destination. Why don't we venture there together? The path stretched slightly longer than anticipated, but with brisk steps, we could chase the setting sun and reach the manor before dusk painted the sky. The harbor, apart from the sandy expanse of the beach, held its own captivating allure. I gazed up at Edward with enthusiasm, but he appeared somewhat perplexed.
それはちょっと難しいんじゃないかな。
Okay, why is it a bit of a challenge? If you're concerned about your father, he should be all right. We'll only be away for a day.
それもあるけど、やっぱりできない。ごめんね。
Okay, so he's declining the offer. There's something going on with him. A shadow of regret crossed Edward's face as he gently declined my suggestion. His lips pursed slightly, and his usually bright eyes seemed to cloud over with a hint of sorrow. The vibrancy of his eyes seemed dimmer, like the dying embers of a flame, mirroring the unfathomable depths of the ocean. A veil of disguised emotion clouded his face, hinting at a hidden turmoil within. The untold words hung heavy in the air, a tangible barrier between us. Edward's clenched jaw and furrowed brows betrayed the secret he chose not to share with me. Oh, CG. Hello. You look very concerned. A wave of wistfulness washed over his face, momentarily morphing his features into a mask of near anguish. But the storm quickly subsided, replaced by a quiet resignation that settled upon his countenance like a veil.
クララ、君の言う通り、僕には屋敷を出ない他の理由があるんだ。
He has other reasons he's not leaving the manor.
でも、君には言いたくない。
But he's not sure if he wants to talk about it. Oh, I see.
ごめんね。
He says. He apologizes. A sharp pang of disappointment pierced my heart as he drew a line, like a cold blade severing the thread of intimacy. Yet I clenched my jaw and forced my muscles into a mask of neutrality, determined not to betray the storm raging within me. I knew that our bond, though cherished, lacked the depth and intimacy that warranted the sharing of every secret. We were not confidants in the truest sense. The realization settled upon me like a heavy cloak, dampening the spark of hope that had flickered within me. Despite the churning turmoil within, I forced the corners of my lips upwards in a semblance of a smile. I must have disturbed you. Please excuse my rudeness.
いや、クララ。全然迷惑じゃないよ。
Okay, she's not being rude at all. Despite the shadow of doubt that crossed his face earlier, Edward's demeanor changed, radiating eagerness.
むしろ嬉しかった。
Quite the contrary. His words filled me with a sense of perplexity. Despite possessing the freedom to depart, Edward seemed inexplicably confined within the manor. People treated him as a liability despite being employed by him and his family. And Edward endured it all with an unwavering submissiveness, never venturing beyond the manor's walls. It became glaringly obvious that the secrets he hoarded close to his chest were the missing pieces to the puzzle of his existence. Interesting. Oh. Okay, well, I'm gonna save it here, and I'm gonna make us go to the main menu, because I think it's been closer to an hour. That is so interesting. Why is it then? What is the secret about Lord Edward, Lord Robert, the ghastly figures going around the mansion? What is happening? Clara's gonna figure it out. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have enjoyed the video. And if you did, please feel free to press the like button. And if you'd like to see more of Under the Thorns, I definitely will continue playing it. I do like a bit of a mystery. Though please bear with me in the future, because sometimes I'm just, mysteries, I will probably figure it out as soon as I'm told certain details. I like coming up with potential explanations to things, but I don't really, I'm hardly one to figure out a mystery sooner rather than later. Anyways, so yeah, if you'd like to subscribe to my channel and see more of Under the Thorns, as well as other visual novels I play, please feel free to subscribe. And thank you again for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!